The sound of Ryan's leather briefcase hitting the marble entryway echoed through Olivia's 12,000-square-foot estate like a judge's gavel. She didn't look up from the orchids she was arranging in the solarium, though every muscle in her body tensed at what she knew was coming. "Olivia!" His voice carried that particular edge she'd come to recognize over their 6 years of marriage. The edge that said he'd had a bad day at work and needed someone to absorb his frustration. "Liv, where the hell are you?" "In the solarium," she called back softly, adjusting a white phalaenopsis stem with steady hands. Hands that had signed billion-dollar acquisition deals while Ryan thought she was attending book club meetings. His footsteps, expensive Italian loafers on imported travertine, both paid for from accounts he didn't know existed, approached with the determined rhythm of a man preparing for confrontation. Olivia kept her eyes on the flowers, playing the role she'd perfected over the years. The devoted wife, the woman content to live in her successful husband's shadow. "We need to talk." Ryan entered the solarium, and she could smell the scotch on his breath. 3 o'clock on a Tuesday afternoon. He loosened his tie, Hermes, a birthday gift she'd purchased through a third-party account, and dropped into one of the wicker chairs without invitation. "About what?" Olivia nearly smiled. Instead, she set down her pruning shears and turned to face him, arranging her features into an expression of attentive concern. "What's wrong, honey?" Ryan ran a hand through his salt and pepper hair, a gesture he used when he wanted to appear thoughtful and burdened. "I had lunch with the partners today. Gary brought his wife. You remember Elizabeth? She just made partner at Morrison and Associates. And David's wife, Caroline. She's launching her 3rd startup." Olivia knew exactly who they were. Elizabeth Morrison Kane had once consulted for one of her subsidiary companies, though she'd never known she was working for Olivia. Caroline's startups were impressive but modest compared to the empire Olivia had built, but she simply nodded, playing the interested but uninformed housewife. "That's wonderful for them," she said carefully. "Is it?" Ryan leaned forward, his blue eyes, the same eyes that had seemed so kind when they first met, now cold and calculating. Because sitting there listening to them talk about their wives' accomplishments, their contributions, I had to sit there and smile while having nothing to say about you. The words landed like physical blows, though Olivia had trained herself not to flinch. "I contribute to our home, to our life." "You arrange flowers, Olivia." He gestured dismissively at the orchids. "You plan dinner parties. You shop. You exist in this beautiful bubble I've created for you, and you contribute nothing of actual value." The irony was so rich she had to bite the inside of her cheek. This beautiful bubble, this estate with its 10 bedrooms, indoor pool, wine cellar stocked with vintages older than their marriage, the art collection featuring 2 original Monets and a Picasso sketch, all of it purchased through a web of LLCs and trusts that led back to her, to the company she'd built from nothing 15 years ago. Thornton Enterprises, her firstborn, her true love, her greatest achievement. A multinational conglomerate specializing in sustainable technology and green energy solutions. They'd just broken into the Fortune 500 last quarter, and Ryan had no idea his wife's name was on every patent, every acquisition, every major decision that shaped the company's direction. "I keep our home," she said quietly, maintaining the facade. "Support?" He laughed, a harsh sound that bounced off the glass walls. "Olivia, let's be honest. You're decorative. You're a trophy wife without even being a trophy. You've never accomplished anything worth displaying." Olivia turned back to the orchids, using the movement to hide the flash of anger that threatened to break through her carefully constructed mask. Her fingers found a wilting leaf, plucking it with more force than necessary. "That's cruel, Ryan." "It's honest." He stood, pacing now, working himself into a state she recognized. This wasn't a spontaneous outburst. He'd been planning this conversation, rehearsing it. "I'm 48 years old. I'm a senior executive at one of the most prestigious consulting firms in the country. I pull down $400,000 a year. $385,000 actually. She'd seen his last bonus statement when it arrived at the house. Good money, certainly. Not even a fraction of what her companies generated quarterly, but respectable. What he didn't know was that his firm's 3 largest clients were all subsidiaries of Thornton Enterprises, fed to them through her COO, Marcus Chen, who'd been with her since the beginning. "And I deserve a partner who matches my ambition," Ryan continued. "Someone who understands the world I operate in, not a woman who spends her days playing house." "Playing house?" She repeated the words slowly, testing them. "In the house that I chose, that I wanted, that I pay for," he corrected sharply. "Every square foot, every piece of furniture, every designer dress in your closet. All of it comes from my salary, Olivia. My work, my success." The house had cost $18 million when she purchased it 7 years ago, 2 months before she met Ryan at that charity gala. The charity, a foundation supporting women in STEM fields, was one she'd founded anonymously. Ryan had been there as a +1, brought by a colleague who was actually attending to network with potential donors. Donors like her, though she'd been listed in the program only as anonymous benefactor, platinum level. She'd worn a simple dress that night, nothing that screamed wealth. She'd introduced herself as Olivia Morgan, leaving off the Thornton that legally followed. When Ryan asked what she did, she'd smiled and said she did a bit of consulting work. Nothing too exciting. The lie had come easily. She'd learned by then that men like Ryan, handsome, successful, confident, couldn't handle the truth of a woman who out-earned them by factors of 100. "I understand this is difficult for you," she said, turning to face him again. "Keep calm. Stay in character. Let him think he's in control." "What would you like me to do?" Ryan stopped pacing. He'd been expecting a fight, she realized. Tears, maybe? Anger? Her calm acceptance seemed to throw him briefly off balance, but he recovered quickly, his jaw setting in that determined way that probably served him well in boardroom negotiations. "I want you to get a job," he said flatly. "A real job, not volunteer work or some part-time boutique position. Something with a salary, benefits, responsibilities. Something that proves you're capable of existing in the adult world." "A job," she echoed. "Yes, and not some minimum wage coffee shop position either. I want you to leverage whatever education you have." His eyes narrowed slightly. "You did finish college, didn't you?" She had 3 degrees, actually. A bachelor's in computer science from MIT, a master's in business administration from Stanford, and a doctorate in sustainable engineering from Cambridge. But Ryan had never asked about her education, and she'd never volunteered the information. He'd simply assumed that the woman he married was decorative and pliable, content to exist in his shadow. "I have a degree," she confirmed, not elaborating. "Then use it. Find something appropriate. Gary's wife started at $75,000. I think that's a reasonable goal for you. It won't match my income, obviously, but at least you'll be contributing something to our household." Our household? The phrase made her skin crawl. Everything he thought of as his, the cars in the garage, the furniture he believed he'd purchased, even the monthly mortgage payment he made to what he assumed was a bank, but was actually an account she'd set up to maintain the illusion. All of it was hers. Built with her innovation, her risk-taking, her sleepless nights turning algorithms into applications that changed entire industries. "How long do I have?" she asked, keeping her voice level. 3 months. Ryan checked his watch, a Patek Philippe she'd had delivered to the house wrapped as a bonus gift from his fictional grateful firm. "If you can't find something suitable by then, we need to seriously reconsider this marriage. I can't continue living with a woman who earns nothing while I carry the entire financial burden." The entire financial burden? The irony was so profound she almost laughed, but instead she simply nodded, the beautiful wife accepting her husband's ultimatum. "I'll start looking tomorrow," she promised. "Good." He seemed satisfied now, his point made. "I'm going to change and hit the gym. The Hendersons are coming for dinner Friday. I assume you can manage that without embarrassing me." The Hendersons. Richard Henderson was the CEO of a mid-sized renewable energy company that had been courting acquisition offers. His company had potential, but needed capital and infrastructure. Thornton Enterprises had been circling for 6 months. And now they were coming to dinner at her house, invited by her husband, who had no idea he was facilitating a business negotiation. "Of course," she said. "I'll make sure everything is perfect." Ryan left without another word, his footsteps receding toward their bedroom suite. Their bedroom, where he slept in sheets with a thread count he'd never bothered to learn, under a ceiling with crown molding he'd never questioned, in a bed that cost more than most people's cars. Alone in the solarium, surrounded by orchids that cost $500 per plant, a detail Ryan had also never questioned, Olivia pulled out her phone. Not the iPhone he knew about, the one she used for calling friends and ordering groceries. The other one, the encrypted satellite phone that connected her to her real life. She had 3 messages waiting. The first was from Marcus. "Board meeting moved to Thursday. Henderson acquisition looking positive. Need your final approval on the terms." The second was from her attorney, Patricia Vance. "Post-nuptial agreement drafted per your specifications. Everything is ironclad. Just need your word to proceed." The third was from her head of security, a former FBI agent named James Roth. "Finish the deep dive on Ryan Morrison. You're not going to like what we found. Call me." Olivia stood there for a long moment, phone in hand, orchids perfuming the air with their delicate sweetness. 6 years. For 6 years she'd maintained this charade, playing the role of the ineffectual wife to a man who grew more contemptuous with each passing month. At first she told herself it was a sociological experiment. Could a marriage work if one party had no idea who their spouse really was? But as time went on, she'd recognized it for what it truly was. A test she was currently failing spectacularly. She stared out at the meticulously landscaped garden beyond the glass walls of the solarium. Something within her had shifted today. Perhaps it was the naked contempt in Ryan's voice, or the way he dismissed her so completely. Whatever it was, she knew the charade was approaching its end. "Am I any better than him?" she whispered to herself. For all her justifications about testing whether Ryan could love the woman rather than the wealth, wasn't she just as guilty of deception? Was a relationship built on such fundamental dishonesty ever real? These questions had haunted her with increasing frequency over the past year. At 3 in the morning, when Ryan slept soundly beside her while she reviewed acquisition proposals on her tablet with the screen dimmed to avoid waking him, she'd wondered if she was sabotaging her own chance at happiness. But she'd never found the courage to tell him the truth, partly from fear that he would only want her for her money, but increasingly from the realization that he didn't want her at all. Not the real her, not even the fake her he thought he'd married. Olivia dialed Marcus first. He picked up on the first ring, his voice warm and familiar. They'd been friends since graduate school, 2 ambitious kids who'd bonded over late-night coding sessions and dreams of changing the world. "Tell me you're finally done with this nonsense," he said without preamble. "He just gave me an ultimatum," she replied, watching a hummingbird hover near the glass. 3 months to find a job earning at least $75,000, or he's reconsidering the marriage. Marcus's laugh was sharp and bitter. $75,000? You made that in interest while we've been talking. What are you going to do? Give him exactly what he wants, she smiled, an expression that would have alarmed Ryan if he could see it. Schedule a meeting with Patricia for tomorrow morning, and tell Henderson I'll be attending Friday's dinner after all. It's time he met the real owner of the company that's about to acquire his. You're going to reveal everything? Not yet. She touched one of the orchid blooms, its petals soft as silk. But I think it's time to start arranging the pieces. Ryan wants me to get a job. I'll get a job. Just not the one he's expecting. Later that evening, after Ryan had returned from the gym and retreated to his study with a scotch and his laptop, Olivia climbed the stairs to the 3rd floor, to a room Ryan never entered because she'd told him it was her craft room. He'd accepted this explanation without question, never curious about what crafts she might be creating, never wondering why the door was always locked. She punched in the security code, a 16-digit number that changed weekly, and entered her real office. 3 walls of windows overlooked the San Francisco Bay, the city glittering in the growing darkness. The 4th wall was covered in screens, each displaying different aspects of her business empire. Stock tickers, news feeds, real-time data from manufacturing facilities in 12 countries. Her desk was a custom piece of curved glass and steel, holding 3 monitors and a keyboard that controlled systems Ryan couldn't begin to comprehend. This was her. This was Olivia Thornton, not Olivia Morrison, the housewife. Here, she didn't arrange flowers or plan dinner parties. Here, she shaped the future of renewable energy, made decisions that affected thousands of employees, negotiated with world leaders and corporate titans. She settled into her chair and powered up the main system. The familiar blue glow illuminated her face as she connected to a secure network that spanned continents. First, she'd need to speak with James. Whatever he'd found in his investigation of Ryan, she needed to know. James answered her video call immediately, his weathered face filling the screen. "You look tense," he observed. "Did something happen?" "Ryan delivered an ultimatum today. I have 3 months to get a job, or the marriage is over." James nodded, unsurprised. "That fits with what I've found." "Tell me." "Your husband's been having an affair," he said bluntly. James didn't believe in softening blows. "Her name is Vanessa Carril, 29. Works in his firm's marketing department. It's been going on for about 8 months. Olivia sat back in her chair, absorbing the information. 8 months. All those late nights at the office, those weekend golf tournaments, those business trips to cities she knew had no active clients. All of it had been a lie. She felt an unexpected twist of pain in her chest. Not for the broken marriage, that had been crumbling for years, but for the realization that, despite her wealth and power, she'd still been deceived in the most ordinary way. "Does he think he's in love with her?" she asked, her voice steady, despite the anger building inside her. "Based on the surveillance, yes. He's been apartment hunting downtown. Trendy area, place goes for about $4,000 a month, which he can't actually afford on his salary, but he doesn't seem to realize that yet." James paused. "There's more." "Go on." "He's been talking to a divorce attorney, planning to file within the next month or 2, well before your 3-month ultimatum to you. Vanessa's pushing him to leave sooner. Apparently she's tired of being the secret girlfriend." Olivia closed her eyes, processing this information. 6 years of marriage, and Ryan had already moved on, already planning his exit. The ultimatum about her employment wasn't about wanting her to contribute. It was about establishing grounds for divorce. He was building a narrative, the unsuccessful wife who couldn't meet his standards, who forced him to carry her financially, who ultimately drove him away through her inadequacy. "But there's something else you should know," James continued, his expression shifting slightly. "I've been digging into his firm's financials. And? They're in trouble. 2 of their major accounts, not the ones connected to your companies, pulled out last quarter. Ryan's division is underperforming. There's talk of downsizing." Olivia leaned forward, intrigued. "He hasn't mentioned anything about this." "According to his emails, he's been hiding it. Maintaining appearances is important to him. He's living beyond his means, the fancy restaurants with Vanessa, the jewelry, the weekend trips. He's running up credit card debt." This explained the subtle changes she'd noticed. The extra scotch at night, the tightness around his eyes when the mail arrived, the way he'd begun checking his phone obsessively when financial notifications came through. "Send me everything," she said. Photos, timeline, financial records of his spending on her. All of it. "Already in your secure email." James hesitated. "Olivia, are you okay?" Was she? The strangest part was realizing she felt more relieved than hurt. Ryan's affair removed any lingering guilt she might have felt about the elaborate deception she'd been maintaining. It confirmed what she'd already begun to suspect. Their marriage had been a failure from the start. 2 people playing roles that had nothing to do with who they actually were. "I'm fine," she said, and meant it. Better than fine, actually. This simplifies things. After ending the call with James, she sat for a moment in silence, contemplating her next move. Ryan's financial difficulties added an interesting dimension to the situation. He wasn't just planning to leave her, he was counting on the divorce settlement to fund his new life with Vanessa. A life he couldn't actually afford without Olivia's money. Money he didn't realize was hers to begin with. The irony was almost poetic. Her phone chimed with an incoming call from Patricia Vance. "I was wondering when you'd call," Patricia said. Her voice was crisp, professional, betraying none of the satisfaction Olivia knew she felt. She'd never liked Ryan, had told Olivia from the beginning that he was a narcissist who'd drain her dry if she let him. "Ready to stop playing dress-up?" "He doesn't know it yet," Olivia replied, "but he's about to get the education of a lifetime. Tell me about the post-nuptial agreement." "It's beautiful, if I do say so myself." Olivia could hear papers shuffling. "Under California law, we can establish that all property acquired before and during the marriage belongs to you alone, which it does through your corporate structure. But here's the clever part. We've documented every expense Ryan thought he was paying but was actually coming from your accounts. The mortgage payments to that fake bank account you set up, the car payments, the credit cards, all of it." Patricia paused for effect. "According to the agreement, if Ryan wants to dissolve the marriage, he'll be required to repay every cent of what he believes he invested in your shared life, which amounts to roughly $2 million over 6 years. Olivia whistled softly. "He doesn't have $4.2 million. "Exactly. His savings account has maybe $40,000. His 401k has another $300,000. He's been living well beyond his actual means because you've been subsidizing his lifestyle without him knowing it." Patricia paused. "Olivia, I have to ask. Why did you do this? Why let it go on so long?" It was a fair question, one she'd asked herself countless times. Usually at 3 a.m. when Ryan was snoring beside her and she was reviewing acquisition proposals on her tablet. "Because I wanted to know," she said finally. "I wanted to know if it was possible to have a real marriage, a real partnership with someone who didn't see me as a bank account or a networking opportunity. Every relationship I'd had before Ryan ended the same way. Once men found out about my money, I stopped being a person and became a resource." She stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the lights of San Francisco twinkling below. "And Ryan proved that hiding my success didn't solve the problem either. He married someone he thought was beneath him, and he spent 6 years making sure I knew it. The cruelty is different, but it's still cruelty." The admission hung between them, both women understanding the fundamental truth it contained. Money didn't cause the problem. It merely revealed the character of those who encountered it. "So what's the plan?" Patricia asked, moving the conversation forward. Olivia outlined her strategy, one she'd been mentally arranging for months, but had never had the motivation to execute until today. As she spoke, she felt something loosen in her chest. Relief, maybe. Or perhaps just the satisfaction of finally taking action after years of passive observation. When she finished, Patricia was quiet for a long moment. Then she laughed, a sound of pure delight. "He's going to deserve every second of this. I'll have everything ready by Thursday." After her calls, Olivia spent an hour reviewing the evidence James had sent. Photos of Ryan and Vanessa at restaurants, entering hotels, shopping for jewelry. Email exchanges discussing their future together. Bank statements showing the mounting debt Ryan was accumulating. The most revealing were the text messages. In them, Ryan portrayed himself as the successful provider trapped in a marriage with a dependent, unambitious wife. He complained about Olivia's neediness and lack of drive, positioning himself as the patient martyr who'd finally reached his breaking point. The contrast between this fictional narrative and reality was stark enough to be almost amusing. Almost. What struck her most, though, wasn't Ryan's deception, but how little it hurt. Somewhere along the way, her heart had disconnected from this marriage, leaving only her pride intact. And even that wasn't as wounded as she might have expected. What did Ryan's opinion matter when the truth was so dramatically different from his perception? She closed the files and turned to the more pressing business at hand. The Henderson acquisition. Richard Henderson's company, Green Horizon Technologies, had developed a promising new solar panel technology that would integrate perfectly with Thornton Enterprises' existing product line. The acquisition had been in negotiations for months, and now, ironically, Ryan had handed her the perfect opportunity to close the deal in person. Olivia drafted an email to Diane Summers, her head of HR, explaining her unusual request. She'd need to apply for a position at Thornton Enterprises under her married name, go through the entire standard interview process, with no one except Diane and Marcus knowing her true identity until she was ready to reveal it. "Consider it an audit of our hiring practices," she wrote, "and a personal experiment in corporate anonymity. Can we pull this off?" Diane's reply came back within minutes. "Olivia, this is either brilliant or completely insane. Possibly both, but yes, absolutely. We can do this. When do you want to start?" "Tomorrow," she wrote back. "Let's see if Thornton Enterprises is ready to hire its own CEO." She worked until midnight, long after Ryan returned home and went to bed without checking on her. In the morning, he'd wake up and go through his usual routine, never questioning where she'd been or what she'd been doing. That was the pattern they'd established over 6 years, parallel lives that intersected only at meals and social functions. But the pattern was breaking. The game was changing. And Ryan, who thought he'd just given his wife an ultimatum, had no idea he'd actually started a countdown to his own reckoning. The morning sun filtered through the kitchen windows as Olivia prepared breakfast, playing her role one last time. Ryan entered wearing his favorite charcoal suit, already on his phone, barely acknowledging her presence. "Coffee's ready," she said softly, pouring him a cup. He grunted in response, scrolling through emails. "I have back-to-back meetings today. Don't forget the Hendersons on Friday. Try to make a good impression for once." Olivia bit back a smile. "I'll do my best." "And the job search?" He finally looked up, his expression expectant. "I already have an interview scheduled," she replied, which was technically true. Diane had arranged for her to meet with the senior HR director at Thornton Enterprises at 10 on Trois. Ryan's eyebrows lifted slightly. "That was fast? Where?" "A technology company downtown, sustainable energy sector." She kept her tone casual, humble. "It's probably nothing, but they agreed to see me." "Well," he straightened his tie, one she'd given him last Christmas. "Don't get your hopes up. These things take time. Just try not to embarrass yourself." He left without kissing her goodbye as usual. Through the window, Olivia watched his BMW disappear down their tree-lined street. Their street. Her street. Every lamppost, every manicured lawn, every security gate, all maintained by the homeowners association she'd personally funded. She waited exactly 5 minutes, then headed upstairs to her real closet, the locked section Ryan had never seen. Inside hung the wardrobe of Olivia Thornton. Tailored power suits, designer pieces chosen for boardrooms and international summits, not charity luncheons and garden parties. She selected a midnight blue Armani suit, paired it with Louboutin heels, and styled her hair in a sleek chignon instead of the soft waves Ryan preferred. The transformation took 40 minutes. When she looked in the mirror, the timid housewife was gone. In her place stood a woman worth $3.2 billion. The drive to Thornton Tower took 25 minutes. She deliberately designed their headquarters to be imposing. 42 stories of glass and steel in the heart of San Francisco's financial district, with their logo visible for blocks. She parked in the underground garage in the spot marked "Reserved CEO" and took her private elevator to the executive floor. Marcus was waiting in her office, grinning. "Ready for your first day as an entry-level applicant?" "Let's see if our hiring process is as good as we think it is." She settled behind her desk, a custom piece she'd had made from reclaimed teak. "Walk me through the schedule." "First interview is with Sarah Mitchell, Senior HR Director. She knows who you are, obviously, but she's agreed to conduct a completely standard interview. Then you'll meet with department heads from 3 divisions. They don't know. After that, if you pass, we'll schedule a final interview with the executive team." "Perfect." She pulled out her fabricated resume, one that listed Olivia Morrison's credentials, MIT degree, some freelance consulting work, a gap for family responsibilities. All true, technically, just missing the part where she'd built a Fortune 500 company during that time. The interview with Sarah was surreal. She sat across from Olivia in the standard conference room, asking textbook questions about experience and goals while they both fought to keep straight faces. "What interests you about Thornton Enterprises?" she asked, pen poised over her notepad. "The mission," Olivia replied honestly. Sustainable energy isn't just good business. It's necessary for our survival as a species. I want to be part of that solution. Sarah smiled. And you're applying for the analyst position in our sustainability assessment division? Yes, it seems like a good fit for my background. The salary range is $75,000 to $90,000, depending on experience. She glanced at the resume. Given your education and the consulting work you've done, I think we could start you at $85,000. How does that sound? More than fair, Olivia said, suppressing a laugh. She made that much in interest every 6 hours. The next 3 interviews were more challenging. She met with David Chen, head of sustainability assessment, a brilliant analyst she'd recruited from Berkeley 3 years ago. He put her through a rigorous technical interview, asking detailed questions about environmental impact algorithms and carbon offset calculations. She had to carefully calibrate her answers, demonstrating competence without revealing the depth of knowledge that would raise suspicions. You really know your stuff, David said, impressed. Most candidates can't explain the greenhouse gas protocol this clearly. Where did you say you've been working? Freelance consulting, she repeated. Mostly remote work for smaller firms, nothing too exciting. Well, you're overqualified for the analyst position, honestly. He made notes on his tablet. Have you considered a senior analyst role? The pay is better, $120. Let's start with the analyst position, she said carefully. I've been out of the office environment for a while. I'd like to ease back in. By 3 o'clock, she'd completed all her interviews. Diane met her in the executive break room, the one on the top floor that required biometric access. They loved you, she reported. David wants to hire you immediately. So does Rebecca from research and Martin from development. They're all sending their recommendations to HR. She paused. Are you really going through with this? Every step. Olivia poured herself coffee from the Italian machine she'd had installed last year. I want the offer letter, the orientation, the whole experience, and I don't want anyone knowing until I'm ready. And when will that be? Friday night, she smiled. At the dinner party, when Richard Henderson is there to witness it. You're diabolical, Diane said, but she was grinning. I'll have your offer letter ready by tomorrow. Olivia spent the rest of the afternoon in her real office, catching up on actual work. There were contracts to review for their expansion into Brazil, a crisis with a supplier in Germany that needed her attention, and final preparations for the Henderson acquisition. Marcus joined her for the supplier meeting via video conference, and together they smoothed over the logistics issue that had threatened to delay their production schedule. At 6 o'clock, she changed back into her housewife costume, a floral dress and cardigan, and drove home, arriving before Ryan. She prepared his favorite meal, set the table, and was arranging fresh flowers when he walked in. How did it go? He asked, dropping his briefcase by the door. Really well, actually. She kept her voice modest, uncertain. They seemed impressed with my qualifications. They said they'd let me know by tomorrow. Ryan looked surprised. That is fast. What's the position? Analyst, in their sustainability division. The salary would be $85,000. 85. He actually smiled, looking pleased with himself. That's better than I expected. Good for you, Olivia. See? You just needed the right motivation. The right motivation. As if his contempt had somehow inspired her to achieve something, rather than revealing his true character. It's not a done deal yet, she said. But I'm hopeful. Well, don't celebrate too early. He loosened his tie, already pulling out his phone. I need to answer some emails before dinner. These clients are demanding. Those clients, 2 of them were Thornton subsidiaries funneled to his firm by Marcus. They were demanding because she'd specifically instructed them to be, keeping Ryan busy and distracted while she set up the next phase. As she finished preparing dinner, Olivia allowed herself to imagine the moment of revelation that was coming. The look on Ryan's face when he realized who she really was, the shock, the disbelief, the dawning comprehension that the woman he'd belittled for years was actually one of the most powerful executives in the country. Would he be angry? Certainly. Humiliated? Absolutely. But she suspected his primary emotion would be calculation. How could he turn this situation to his advantage? Ryan was nothing if not opportunistic. He'd immediately begin strategizing how to extract maximum benefit from being married to a billionaire. And that's where her plan would really begin to bite, because Ryan wouldn't just be losing the fictional narrative he'd constructed about their marriage. He'd be losing the financial security he'd taken for granted, the lifestyle he'd claimed credit for providing, the future he'd planned with Vanessa, all of it built on assumptions that were about to crumble beneath him. The offer letter arrived Wednesday morning, delivered by courier to their house. Ryan was already at work, so Olivia opened it alone, reading the formal language offering Olivia Morrison a position at Thornton Enterprises. Starting salary, $85,000. Benefits package included. Start date flexible. She called Ryan at the office. "I got the offer," she said, letting excitement color her voice. "That's actually impressive." He sounded genuinely surprised. "When do you start?" "That's flexible. I was thinking Monday after our dinner party. That gives me a few days to prepare." "Sure, fine. Listen, I have to go." "But Olivia, I'm proud of you. This is good." "This is what I wanted." After he hung up, she stared at the phone for a long moment. "I'm proud of you." As if her worth was determined by his approval. As if an $85,000 salary made her valuable in his eyes when she'd been worth billions all along. Thursday would be the board meeting. Friday, the dinner party. By Saturday, everything would change. She was ready. Thursday morning arrived with a sense of anticipation that Olivia hadn't felt in years. Today was the day she would finally step out of the shadows at Thornton Enterprises and reveal herself to her board of directors. For 15 years, she had operated through proxies and encrypted communications, building an empire while remaining anonymous, a necessity in the early days when she was young and female in a male-dominated industry. Staying hidden had become habit, then strategy, then a kind of game. But games had to end eventually. She dressed carefully that morning in a crimson power suit that contrasted sharply with the pastel cardigans and floral dresses Ryan was accustomed to seeing. He had already left for work, with another perfunctory goodbye and a reminder about tomorrow's dinner with the Hendersons. "Make sure the caterers don't screw up the wine pairings like last time," he'd said, as if she were some incompetent party planner, rather than a woman who had orchestrated corporate events for heads of state. As soon as his car disappeared down the street, she made 3 rapid calls. First to Marcus to confirm the board meeting arrangements, then to Patricia to finalize the legal documents, and finally to her head of household staff, a team Ryan believed consisted of occasional day cleaners but was actually a permanent crew who maintained the estate with military precision. "Mrs. Thornton," her house manager said, "the preparations for tomorrow's dinner are underway. The menu you selected has been approved with the catering team, and the florist will deliver the arrangements by 3. "Thank you, Michael. And please ensure the Chateau Margaux 1982 is served with the main course. It's Mr. Henderson's favorite." "Of course, madam." This level of detailed planning was second nature to Olivia. She'd built her company by anticipating needs, predicting reactions, and staying 3 moves ahead of her competition. Today's board meeting and tomorrow's dinner party were simply extensions of that same strategic thinking, except this time, her husband was the unwitting opponent. She arrived at Thornton Tower an hour before the scheduled board meeting. The morning bustle of the financial district energized her as she walked through the sleek marble lobby, nodding to the security guards who recognized her from her job interview the previous day, but had no idea she owned the building. Marcus met her in the executive conference room, his face a mixture of excitement and concern. "Are you absolutely sure about this?" he asked, straightening papers at the head of the massive oak table. 15 years is a long time to maintain anonymity, just to blow it all in 48 hours. Olivia ran her hand along the polished wood surface. "This was always the end game, Marcus. I just needed the right catalyst." She smiled tightly. Ryan provided that. "Speaking of your soon-to-be ex-husband, I had an interesting call this morning." "Oh?" "From Collins and Whitman, Ryan's firm. Apparently they're on the verge of losing another major client. Their CFO wanted to know if we could expedite the payment schedule on our consulting contract." Olivia raised an eyebrow. "Their financial problems are worse than we thought." "Much worse. According to my sources, they're considering layoffs next quarter. Ryan's division would be hit hard." "How fascinating that he hasn't mentioned any of this to me," she said, though of course it wasn't surprising at all. Ryan's pride would never allow him to admit financial vulnerability, especially to a wife he considered financially dependent on him. "What do you want me to do about the payment schedule?" Marcus asked. Olivia considered for a moment. "Tell them we need to review the terms. Let's keep them dangling until after tomorrow night." "Cruel," Marcus said with a slight smile. "But effective." "This isn't about cruelty," she corrected him. "It's about finally being honest. With Ryan, with the board, with myself." Before Marcus could respond, Olivia's phone chimed with an alert from Diane. "The board members are arriving. They're in the executive reception area." "It's time." She took a deep breath and smoothed her jacket. "How do I look?" "Like a CEO who's about to shock the hell out of some very experienced executives." She laughed. "Perfect." Olivia arrived early in the boardroom, taking her seat at the head of the table before any of the board members entered. For 15 years, she'd attended these meetings via encrypted video, her face obscured, her voice modulated. The board knew her only as O. Thornton, the mysterious founder who'd built an empire from algorithms and ambition. Marcus entered first, followed by the 8 board members, successful executives and investors who had been with her for years. They filed in, chatting among themselves, settling into their usual chairs. Then they looked up and saw her sitting at the head of the table, and the room fell silent. "Good morning," she said calmly. "For those who don't know me, I'm Olivia Thornton. I believe we're overdue for a proper introduction." The shock on their faces was worth every uncomfortable moment of the past 6 years. Margaret Chen, their lead investor, recovered first. You're Olivia Thornton?" "The Olivia Thornton?" "The same," she smiled. "I apologize for the secrecy, but it was necessary in the beginning, and then it became convenient. Circumstances have changed, and it's time for me to step out of the shadows." For the next hour, she walked them through the reasons for her anonymity, the structure she'd maintained, and her plans going forward. They listened, asked questions, and by the end, they were all nodding in understanding. "The Henderson acquisition," she said finally. "I'll be closing that deal personally on Friday night at a dinner party at my home. I'd like several of you there as witnesses, though Richard Henderson won't know who you are until the right moment." "This is highly unusual," said Robert Chang, their chief financial officer. "But then again, everything about you has been unusual. I suppose we shouldn't expect anything different." "One more thing," she added. "My husband, Ryan Morrison, will also be there. He doesn't know who I am, who I really am. That will also be revealed Friday night." Margaret's eyes widened. "Your husband doesn't know you own Thornton Enterprises." "He doesn't know I own anything," she confirmed. "He believes he's been supporting me financially for 6 years. The revelation should be educational for him." Marcus laughed. "Educational? That's one word for it." The meeting continued with their regular business agenda, but Olivia could feel the shift in the room. The board members kept stealing glances at her, reassessing everything they thought they knew about their company's leadership. By the time they adjourned, there was a new energy in the air, anticipation mixed with respect. As the board members filed out, Margaret stayed behind. "I've known you, or at least your voice and ideas, for 12 years, she said, studying Olivia's face. "I always suspected you were younger than you let on, but this is remarkable." "Thank you, Margaret. May I ask why now? Why reveal yourself after all this time?" Olivia considered the question carefully. "Have you ever worn a mask for so long that you started to forget what your real face looked like?" Margaret nodded slowly. "I think many women in business understand that feeling. It's time to remove the mask. All of them." Olivia gathered her papers. "I'll see you tomorrow night." After the board meeting, Olivia didn't return home immediately. Instead, she spent several hours in her office, handling an actual crisis that had arisen with their new manufacturing facility in Portugal. This was the reality of her life, balancing the high-stakes drama of her personal situation with the everyday demands of running a global company. A video call with their Portuguese operations manager revealed that local regulations were threatening to delay the facility's opening. Olivia spent 2 hours negotiating with officials, leveraging relationships she'd built over years, and finally reaching a compromise that would allow them to proceed with minimal disruption. By the time she resolved the issue, it was nearly 6 o'clock. She needed to get home before Ryan and change back into her housewife clothes. But as she was gathering her things, a news alert flashed across her screen. Collins and Whitman stocks tumble amid client loss rumors. She clicked on the article, scanning it quickly. The market had reacted to whispers about the firm's financial troubles, and their stock had dropped 15% in afternoon trading. Ryan's company was in more serious trouble than even Marcus had indicated. This added a new dimension to tomorrow night's revelations. Ryan wouldn't just be losing his fictional narrative about their marriage, he'd potentially be losing his job as well. For a moment, Olivia felt a twinge of something like pity. Everything Ryan valued, his status, his financial security, his self-image as a successful provider, was crumbling simultaneously. She closed the article and sat back in her chair, suddenly questioning her plan. Was this revenge? Justice? Or something uglier that she'd rather not name? "You look troubled," Marcus said from the doorway. "Ryan's company is tanking. He could lose his job right as I'm about to reveal that his entire marriage has been a sham." Marcus entered and sat across from her. "Are you having second thoughts?" "Not about ending the marriage," she clarified, "but about the method. Is this public humiliation necessary? Wouldn't it be cleaner, kinder, to just tell him privately? Hand him the divorce papers and be done with it?" "Would he have given you the same consideration?" Marcus asked quietly. "Has he been kind in the way he's treated you? In the way he's planning to discard you?" She thought of Ryan's contemptuous words in the solarium, the evidence of his affair with Vanessa, the divorce attorney he'd already consulted. "No," she admitted, "but does that justify me behaving the same way?" Marcus leaned forward. "Olivia, this isn't just about your marriage. It's about Richard Henderson and the acquisition. It's about finally taking your rightful place as the public face of Thornton Enterprises. It's about living authentically after 15 years in the shadows. Don't let Ryan's potential discomfort derail something that's so much bigger than him." She knew he was right. This wasn't merely about revenge. It was about reclaiming her identity, about stepping into the light after years of hiding. Ryan's humiliation was a side effect, not the goal. "You're right," she said finally. "The plan proceeds as scheduled." When she arrived home, Ryan was already there, a rare occurrence. He was in the living room, pacing, phone pressed to his ear. "I don't care what the market is saying," he was saying, his voice tight with strain. "Collins and Whitman is solid. We're not losing clients. We're strategically realigning our portfolio." He paused, listening. "Well, your information is wrong. I'm heading up our largest accounts, and I can tell you with certainty that they're not going anywhere." Olivia slipped past the living room and up to their bedroom, changing quickly into a casual dress that aligned with Ryan's expectations. By the time she came back downstairs, he had ended his call and was pouring himself a generous scotch. "Bad day?" she asked innocently. He startled, not having heard her enter. "Market speculation," he said dismissively. "Nothing serious. How was your day? Starting to panic about your new job yet?" The condescension in his voice was so familiar, she almost found it comforting. At least some things were consistent. "Actually, I'm excited," she said truthfully. "I think I'm going to be very good at it." Ryan smiled patronizingly. "Of course you are, honey. Just remember to be humble. Nobody likes a know-it-all, especially not from a new hire." "I'll keep that in mind," she said, matching his smile with one of her own. "Do you want dinner? I can heat up something." "No need. I'm meeting clients later." He glanced at his watch, the Patek Philippe she'd bought him. "Don't wait up." Clients, or Vanessa. It hardly mattered anymore. In less than 24 hours, everything would change. After Ryan left, Olivia went to her secret office and made a final call to Patricia. "Everything's set for tomorrow," Patricia confirmed. "The post-nuptial agreement is ready for signatures. though I doubt Ryan will be in a signing mood once he learns the truth. And if he refuses? Then we proceed with the divorce under the terms of the prenup. Either way, he walks away with nothing except what he can prove he earned himself. Which isn't much, Olivia noted. Precisely. Though I should warn you, men like Ryan rarely go quietly. Once he realizes what's happening, he might get desperate. Desperate people do desperate things. I've considered that, Olivia said. James is increasing security for tomorrow night, and I've taken precautions with our accounts and systems. Good, Patricia teased. Are you sure you want to do this with an audience? It's going to be messy. I'm counting on it, Olivia replied. The audience ensures Ryan can't try to manipulate the narrative later. There will be witnesses to every word, every reaction. Besides, I've lived my entire professional life in the shadows. If I'm finally stepping into the light, I might as well make it memorable. Well, I can promise you one thing, Patricia said with a laugh. No one at that dinner party will ever forget it. Friday morning arrived with perfect weather. Clear skies, mild temperature, ideal for the evening Olivia had planned. She rose early, checking her messages before Ryan was even awake. Everything was proceeding according to schedule. The caterers were confirmed, the florists would arrive at 3, and security was arranged discreetly around the property. Most importantly, her guests had all confirmed their attendance. Margaret Chen and Robert Chang from the board, Marcus and his wife, 3 other carefully selected executives from Thornton Enterprises, and of course Richard and Patricia Henderson, who believed they were simply attending a dinner party hosted by a senior consultant and his wife. Ryan emerged from the bedroom as she was preparing coffee, his hair still damp from the shower. Big day tomorrow, he said, accepting the cup she offered. First day as a contributing member of society. Yes, she agreed mildly. A new beginning. He studied her for a moment. You seem different this morning. Do I? More, I don't know, confident? He frowned slightly. Don't get ahead of yourself, Olivia. It's an entry-level position. You have a lot to prove. I'm well aware, she said, suppressing a smile. Are you nervous about tonight? The Hendersons are important to you. Ryan straightened, shoulders squaring. Richard Henderson is one of the most influential men in renewable energy. If I can bring his business to Collins and Whitman, it would be transformative for the firm. He didn't add, and for my career, but the implication was clear. I'll make sure everything is perfect, she promised. See that you do. He finished his coffee and grabbed his briefcase. I should be home by 6 to shower and change before they arrive at 7:30. After he left, Olivia spent the morning making final arrangements. She called Marcus to confirm he'd brought the Henderson acquisition documents to her office, checked with James about security protocols, and reviewed the dinner menu one last time. At noon, she drove to Thornton Tower for a brief appearance. Not as Olivia Morrison, the new hire, but as Olivia Thornton, CEO. She needed to sign several documents related to the Henderson acquisition that couldn't wait until after the weekend. As she walked through the executive floor, she noticed how the employees who had interviewed her just days ago now looked at her with new awareness. Word of her true identity had spread quickly among the senior staff, though the broader company wouldn't know until next week's official announcement. David Chen, who had so thoroughly questioned her technical knowledge during her interview, now stood as she passed his office, his expression a mixture of embarrassment and awe. Dr. Thornton, he said, the formality a sharp contrast to his casual manner during the interview. I just wanted to say that you're sorry for not recognizing me? She finished with a smile. Please don't be. Your thoroughness proves our hiring process works exactly as it should. I was impressed with your questions. Still, he looked pained. I feel like I should have known. How could you have? She asked reasonably. Until yesterday, fewer than 10 people in the world knew who really ran this company. Your reaction, treating me as a qualified but ordinary candidate, was exactly what I was testing. This seemed to reassure him somewhat, though he still looked flustered. Olivia made a mental note to have a longer conversation with him next week. David was too valuable to lose to embarrassment over something so minor. She spent an hour in her office reviewing and signing documents before heading back home to oversee preparations for the evening. The caterers arrived precisely on schedule, followed by the florists and the additional service staff. By 5 o'clock, the house was transformed. The dining room table was set with her finest china and crystal. Fresh floral arrangements graced every room, and the lighting was adjusted to create an atmosphere of elegant intimacy. The wine, including Richard Henderson's favorite Chateau Margaux, had been decanted and was breathing. Everything was perfect, which was exactly what Ryan would expect. What he wouldn't expect was the folder of documents waiting in her study, or the group of witnesses strategically invited to observe his humiliation. Olivia went upstairs to dress, not in something Ryan would choose, not the demure cocktail dress or soft pastels he preferred. Instead, she selected a floor-length emerald gown, fitted and elegant, paired with the diamond necklace she'd bought herself last year, a piece worth more than Ryan's annual salary, kept hidden in her locked closet until now. When she came downstairs, Ryan was already in the living room, drink in hand, and he froze when he saw her. "What are you wearing?" His tone was accusatory. "A dress. For our dinner party. It's too much, Olivia. Too formal. Too flashy. The Hendersons will think you're trying too hard." "I'll take that risk," she said calmly. Before he could argue further, the doorbell rang. The first guests had arrived. Margaret Chen and Robert Chang, who Ryan knew as business associates, Olivia had supposedly met through volunteer work. They greeted her warmly, playing their parts perfectly. "Olivia, you look stunning," Margaret said, kissing her cheek. "And Ryan, good to see you again." Ryan shook hands, his expression confused. These people treated Olivia with a deference he wasn't used to seeing, and it clearly unsettled him. More guests arrived. 3 more board members, Marcus with his wife, and finally Richard and Patricia Henderson. Richard was a tall man in his early 60s, silver-haired and distinguished, exactly the type of executive Ryan admired. They shook hands, made small talk, while Patricia, a sharp-eyed woman who'd built her own successful consulting firm, assessed the room with interest. Over cocktails, Ryan held court, discussing his work at the consulting firm, name-dropping clients, positioning himself as the successful executive hosting a dinner party. Olivia watched him perform, saw how he diminished her in small ways, interrupting when she spoke, correcting her statements, making jokes at her expense that made everyone laugh uncomfortably. "Olivia's been a homemaker for years," he told Richard at one point. "But she finally landed a job this week. We're very proud." "Oh?" Richard's eyebrows lifted. "Where will you be working?" Before she could answer, Ryan jumped in. "Some tech company downtown, analyst position. It's a start anyway." "Which company?" Richard pressed. "Thornton Enterprises," she said, meeting his eyes steadily. The reaction from those who knew was subtle but noticeable. Marcus suppressed a smile. Margaret raised her wineglass to hide her expression, but Richard looked genuinely interested. "Thornton Enterprises? That's impressive, Olivia. They're very selective. What will you be doing there?" "Actually," she said, setting down her glass, "I think it's time we move this conversation to the dining room. I have some announcements to make." Ryan looked startled, but Olivia was already moving toward the dining room, and the guests followed. The table was set perfectly, with place cards she'd arranged herself. She had seated Ryan at the opposite end from her, with Richard Henderson on her right and Patricia on her left. Once everyone was settled, she stood. The room fell silent. "Thank you all for coming tonight," she began. "Some of you know why you're here. Others are about to find out. Ryan, Richard, Patricia, this evening is going to include some surprises. I ask for your patience as I explain." Ryan was frowning now, sensing something was wrong but not knowing what. "Richard," she continued, turning to him, "your company, Green Horizon Technologies, has been in acquisition talks with Thornton Enterprises for 6 months. You've been negotiating through intermediaries, working with executives you've never met in person. You've been frustrated by the process, the secrecy, the layers of corporate structure between you and the decision-maker." Richard nodded slowly. "That's accurate, though I'm not sure why you're bringing this up at a dinner party." Because, she said, I'm the decision maker you've been trying to reach. I'm Olivia Thornton, founder and CEO of Thornton Enterprises, and I'm prepared to offer you a deal tonight that will exceed your expectations. The silence that followed was profound. Richard's mouth opened, then closed. Patricia's eyes went wide. And Ryan? Ryan looked like she'd struck him. That's not funny, Olivia, he said, his voice tight. It's not a joke. She gestured to Margaret. Margaret Chen has been my lead investor for 12 years. Robert Chang is our CFO. Marcus Chen is my COO. We founded the company together 15 years ago. Every person at this table except you, Richard, Patricia, and Vanessa knows exactly who I am. Vanessa? Patricia looked confused. Who's Vanessa? Ryan's girlfriend, she said calmly. The woman he's been seeing for 8 months. The woman he's planning to leave me for. She turned to Ryan, whose face had gone white. Did you think I didn't know? I've had security following you since January. I know about the apartment you're looking at. I know about the divorce attorney you consulted. I know everything. This is insane, Ryan stammered, standing. You're making this up. Am I? She pulled out her phone, her real phone, and brought up a photograph. This is you and Vanessa having lunch at Cafe Rosso last Tuesday. This is you looking at apartments on Post Street. This is the credit card statement showing charges at jewelry stores, restaurants, and hotels. All paid for with money you thought was yours but was actually mine. She set the phone down and looked around the table. For 6 years, I've maintained an elaborate deception. I let Ryan believe he was supporting me, that his salary paid for this house, these cars, our lifestyle. In reality, I've been funding everything through a complex network of trusts and corporate accounts. This house, she continued, I bought it 2 months before I met him. The mortgage payments he thinks he's been making? They go into an account I control. Every dollar he's spent, every luxury he's enjoyed has come from my company, my work, my success. Why? Richard asked, genuinely curious. Why hide it? Because I wanted to know if it was possible to have a real relationship with someone who didn't see me as a resource to be exploited. I'd been burned before by men who wanted my money more than me. So I hid who I was, presented myself as someone ordinary, someone safe. She looked at Ryan, who was still standing, frozen. I thought maybe if a man fell in love with regular Olivia instead of billionaire Olivia, it would be real. But what I learned was that Ryan didn't fall in love with me at all. He fell in love with the idea of being superior to me. He needed someone beneath him to feel successful. Olivia, Ryan said, his voice strained. This is crazy. You don't own a Fortune 500 company. She smiled. But I do. Marcus, would you mind? Marcus stood, pulling out his tablet. Thornton Enterprises, founded 15 years ago by Olivia Thornton, specializing in sustainable energy technology. Current valuation, $28 billion. Annual revenue, $4.6 billion. Employees 12,000 across 32 countries. Major innovations include the Thornton solar panel, the most efficient photovoltaic technology on the market, and the T-battery, which has revolutionized energy storage. The company went public 8 years ago, but Olivia retained controlling interest, 68% of shares. As for this house, Margaret added, it's worth $22 million now, purchased by Olivia 7 years ago through the Meridian Trust. The car's in your garage, Ryan, titled in your name but paid for through shell accounts Olivia controls. Your credit cards, your country club membership, even the gym where you work out, all paid for by Olivia's money. Ryan sat down heavily, his face ashen. This isn't possible. You're a housewife. You arrange flowers. You plan dinner parties. I do those things, she agreed. But I also run a multinational corporation, hold 43 patents, and sit on the boards of 6 other companies. The volunteer work I did, board meetings, the book clubs, executive strategy sessions. Every moment you thought I was doing nothing, I was building an empire you couldn't begin to comprehend. Olivia turned back to Richard. So here's my offer. I'll acquire Green Horizon Technologies for $800 million, $200 million above your asking price. You'll stay on as president of the division with full autonomy and a seat on our board. Your employees keep their jobs, your technology gets the infrastructure it needs, and together we'll dominate the renewable energy market for the next decade. Richard was staring at her, then at the papers Marcus was sliding across the table. This is everything I wanted. I know. I read your proposal months ago and knew we'd be a perfect fit. I've just been waiting for the right moment. She looked at Ryan again. The right moment to stop hiding. Patricia spoke up, her voice careful. And what happens now with your marriage? That depends on Ryan. Olivia sat back down, folding her hands on the table. He gave me an ultimatum 3 months ago. Get a job or he'd reconsider our marriage. Well, I got a job at my own company. Starting Monday, I'll be working as an analyst in the sustainability division, earning $85,000 a year. Exactly what he said would be acceptable. I'll deposit those paychecks into our joint account, and technically I'll be meeting his requirements. But, she continued, I've also had my attorney draw up some documents. Ryan, if you want a divorce, you're entitled to one. California is a community property state, which means you're entitled to half of everything acquired during our marriage. She leaned forward slightly. Unfortunately for you, I acquired nothing during our marriage. I already owned everything before we met. The prenuptial agreement you signed, the one you didn't bother reading carefully because you assumed you were the wealthy one, specifies this very clearly. Ryan found his voice. The prenup said we kept our own assets separate. Exactly, and all the assets are mine. She smiled thinly. However, there's an interesting clause you also didn't read. If we divorce, you're required to repay any community expenses you claim to have paid but were actually paid by the other spouse. So all those mortgage payments, I'll need those back. The car payments, the credit cards, the club memberships, all of it. Roughly $4.2 million. Patricia whistled softly. He doesn't have $4.2 million. I know, Olivia said. Which is why I'm offering an alternative. Ryan, you can stay married to me. We'll renegotiate our relationship with complete honesty this time. You'll continue living here, continue working at your firm, which, by the way, I can make very successful or very unsuccessful depending on my mood, since I control 3 of your biggest clients. She continued, in exchange, you'll sign a post-nuptial agreement acknowledging my assets, and you'll attend marriage counseling with me to see if we can build something real. Or, she paused, you can have your divorce. You can go live with Vanessa in that apartment you can't afford. I'll call in the debt you owe me. You'll declare bankruptcy, and you'll start your life over with nothing. Your choice. The room was silent. Ryan sat there, his world crumbling around him, every assumption he'd ever made about his life revealed as fiction. Finally, Richard laughed, a genuine, surprised sound. This is the most extraordinary business dinner I've ever attended. Olivia, you're remarkable. He extended his hand across the table. I accept your offer. She shook it firmly. Welcome to Thornton Enterprises, Richard. Patricia, she turned to Henderson's wife. I assume you'll want to be involved in the negotiations. Absolutely. Patricia was smiling now. I think I'm going to enjoy working with you. The rest of the dinner was almost festive. They discussed the Henderson acquisition, celebrated the partnership, and ignored Ryan, who sat silent at the end of the table, barely touching his food. When the evening ended and the guests departed, each one congratulated Olivia, welcomed her to her new position, and promised discretion about everything they'd witnessed. Richard was the last to leave. You know, he said at the door, when I came here tonight, I expected a boring dinner party with your husband's colleagues. Instead, I got front row seats to the most dramatic business negotiation of my career. Thank you for that. Thank you for understanding, she replied. I know my methods are unconventional. Unconventional but effective. I'll have my team contact Marcus on Monday to start the paperwork. After everyone left, Olivia found Ryan sitting in the living room, staring at nothing, a half-empty glass of scotch in his hand. So, she said, settling into the chair across from him. What's your decision? He looked at her, really looked at her, perhaps for the first time in years. Who are you? I'm Olivia Thornton. I'm the woman you married and the woman you never bothered to really know. I'm brilliant, successful, and worth more than you ever imagined. And I'm also hurt, angry, and disappointed that the man I chose to love proved to be exactly like all the others, just in a different way. Why didn't you tell me? His voice was hollow. Because I wanted you to love me for me, not for my money, not for my connections, not for what I could do for your career, just me. She leaned forward. But you never did you? You loved the idea of being superior. You needed me to be less so you could be more. Ryan was quiet for a long time. He looked down at his glass, then drained it in one swallow. I suspected something, he said finally, surprising her. Not this. Not that you were a billionaire CEO, but something. The way you'd disappear for hours. The calls you take in another room. How you always seem to know more about my business and my clients than you should. When did you suspect? 6 months ago. That charity event for women in STEM. You spoke with such authority to that professor from Berkeley. You knew details about quantum computing that no housewife would know. Olivia remembered the evening. She'd been careless, allowing herself to engage in a technical discussion she'd normally have avoided. So I had you followed, Ryan continued, not by some fancy security firm, I couldn't afford that, just by a buddy from college who does PI work occasionally. He said you spent hours at that tech building downtown, Thornton Tower. He laughed bitterly. I thought maybe you were having an affair with some executive there. That's when I started seeing Vanessa. The irony was almost too much. So you cheated on me because you thought I was cheating on you, and all along I was just going to work. My work, he corrected automatically, then caught himself. Your work? God, it's all been a lie, hasn't it? Our entire marriage. Not all of it, she said softly. I did love you, Ryan, at the beginning. You were charming, attentive, ambitious. I admired that. I thought we could build something real. But then you discovered I was just a fraud, he said bitterly. A middle manager playing at being a titan of industry. No, then I discovered you couldn't love me unless you felt superior to me. The more successful you became, the more you needed to diminish me to maintain your ego. She stood, smoothing her emerald gown. The affair was the final proof that this marriage was already over. You checked out months ago, Ryan. You just didn't have the courage to tell me. What do you want from me? He asked finally. I want you to leave, she said simply. I want you to take your clothes, your personal items, and go stay wherever you've been staying with Vanessa. I'll have my attorney contact you next week with divorce papers. I won't pursue the debt. Consider it my final gift to you, but I want you out of my house, out of my life, and I never want to see you again. Olivia, my name is Dr. Olivia Thornton, she cut him off. I have 3 degrees, 43 patents, and a company that's changing the world. You have 48 hours to collect your things. After that, anything left will be donated. He stood slowly, looking around the room as if seeing it for the first time. I never knew you. No, she agreed. You never wanted to. That was the problem. He moved toward the door, then stopped. My firm, Collins and Whitman, we're in trouble. You know that, don't you? Those clients you mentioned controlling, if you pull them... I haven't decided what to do about that yet, she said honestly. It depends on you. A clean, quiet divorce? I might be inclined to keep the business flowing. Make a scene, fight me, try to damage my reputation. I'll crush your firm so thoroughly that no one in San Francisco will hire you. Ryan nodded slowly. I understand. Do you? Because I've spent 6 years being underestimated by you. Don't make the mistake of underestimating me now. He looked at her for a long moment, something like respect finally dawning in his eyes. I won't. Goodbye, Olivia. Goodbye, Ryan. He left that night, and Olivia never saw him again. The divorce was finalized 3 months later, quick and clean, with Ryan signing away any claim to her assets in exchange for Olivia forgiving the debt. He married Vanessa 6 months after that, Olivia saw the announcement on social media, and last she heard, he was working at a different consulting firm in a less prestigious position. Olivia started her new job at Thornton Enterprises the following Monday, working as an analyst for exactly 3 weeks before being promoted to her actual position as CEO. The press release announcing her emergence caused a sensation. The mysterious founder finally revealed, a woman in her 30s who built an empire while hiding in plain sight. The Henderson acquisition went through flawlessly. Richard became one of her most trusted advisors, and Patricia ended up joining their board. Together, they expanded into 6 new markets and doubled their revenue. The transition from anonymous executive to public figure wasn't without challenges. Suddenly, Olivia had to navigate media attention, speaking engagements, and the constant scrutiny that came with being one of the few female CEOs in Silicon Valley. There were profiles in business magazines, invitations to prestigious conferences, and no shortage of investment bankers and venture capitalists eager to associate with Thornton Enterprises, now that its enigmatic founder had emerged from the shadows. 6 months after her public debut, Olivia sat in her office at Thornton Tower, reviewing the quarterly results with Marcus. The company had exceeded expectations again, with their stock hitting an all-time high. "You were right," Marcus said, closing his laptop. "Going public, you, not the company, was the right move. Our brand recognition is up 80%, recruitment applications have tripled, and investor confidence is at record levels." "It's easier to believe in a company when you can see who's running it," Olivia agreed. "Speaking of which, you have that interview with Forbes tomorrow. Are you ready?" Olivia nodded. "As ready as I'll ever be, though I'm still not comfortable talking about the personal aspects." "You mean Ryan?" "I mean my failed marriage." She sighed. "It's been nearly a year, and I still don't know if I did the right thing." "Which part? The divorce or the way you revealed everything?" "Both. Neither." She stood and walked to the window, looking out at the San Francisco skyline. "I've been thinking a lot about authenticity lately. Was I wrong to hide who I was? Was I setting the relationship up for failure from the beginning? Or was Ryan's inability to love me unless he felt superior to me the real problem?" "Maybe both things can be true," Marcus suggested. "You made a mistake in hiding your true self. He made a bigger mistake in needing you to be less than you are." She smiled ruefully. "Wisdom from the man who told me the whole plan was insane 6 years ago." "And I was right," he grinned. "It was insane, but it was also uniquely you. Bold, strategic, and ultimately transformative." That evening, Olivia hosted a different kind of dinner party at her home. Not the grand orchestrated revelation of a year ago, but an intimate gathering of women in tech, entrepreneurs, engineers, and executives she'd come to call friends since stepping into the public eye. As they shared wine and stories in the same dining room where she'd confronted Ryan, Olivia felt a sense of peace she hadn't experienced in years. These women knew exactly who she was, her successes, her failures, her strengths, and her flaws, and accepted her without qualification. To Olivia, Margaret Chen raised her glass in a toast, who reminded all of us that living authentically isn't just good for the soul, it's good for business too. The women laughed and clinked glasses. The conversation flowed naturally to their various projects, the challenges they faced as women in male-dominated fields, and the ways they were working to change the industry from within. Later, as the gathering wound down, Patricia Henderson pulled Olivia aside. "I've been meaning to tell you something," she said. "Richard and I had dinner with Ryan and Vanessa last month." Olivia raised an eyebrow. "Social or business?" "A little of both. He's trying to rebuild his client base at the new firm. He asked about you." "Did he? What did he want to know?" "Whether you were seeing anyone, whether you seemed happy." Patricia studied her face. "He seems changed, humbled, certainly, but also more genuine somehow." "The loss of his imaginary superiority must have been therapeutic," Olivia said dryly. Patricia laughed. "Perhaps, but he also said something that struck me. He said that living with you, even when he didn't know who you really were, was the closest he'd ever come to being with someone extraordinary, and that he'd thrown it away because he couldn't handle not being the most important person in the room." Olivia absorbed this in silence. Anyway, Patricia continued, I thought you might want to know, not that you should care what he thinks. Thank you, Olivia said finally. I'm glad he's found some self-awareness. I hope he's kinder to Vanessa than he was to me. After everyone had gone, Olivia walked through her home. Her real home, not the stage set it had been during her marriage. She'd redecorated after Ryan left, replacing the neutral tones he'd preferred with vibrant colors and bold patterns that reflected her personality. The careful artifice of the housewife was gone, replaced by authentic expression of who she truly was. In the solarium where Ryan had delivered his ultimatum a year ago, she had replaced the delicate orchids with hardier plants, succulents and small fruit trees that required less maintenance and offered more substance. A metaphor, perhaps, for the change in her own life. She poured herself a small glass of wine and sat among her plants, contemplating the journey she'd taken. From hiding in plain sight to embracing the spotlight. From a marriage built on deception to a life of authenticity. Had she learned what she'd set out to discover? Was it possible to find true love when you had billions? She still didn't know. But she had learned something equally valuable, that hiding your light to make others comfortable didn't lead to happiness. It just gave them permission to treat you as less than you were. Her phone chimed with a text message. It was from Marcus. Fortune just called. They want you for their 40 under 40 cover. She smiled and typed back. Tell them I'm available and that I have a hell of a story to tell. 1 year to the day after the dinner party that had changed everything, Olivia stood at a podium in Thornton Tower's main auditorium. Behind her, a banner proclaimed the launch of the Thornton Foundation's Women in STEM initiative, a $100 million commitment to supporting female scientists, engineers, and entrepreneurs. The audience was filled with journalists, industry leaders, and the young women who would be the first recipients of the Foundation's fellowships. In the front row sat Marcus, Margaret, and other familiar faces from Thornton Enterprises. When I started this company 15 years ago, Olivia began, I believed I had to hide who I was to succeed. As a young woman in a field dominated by men, I thought anonymity was my only protection against bias and dismissal. She paused, looking out at the sea of faces, particularly the young women who reminded her of herself at the beginning of her career. I was wrong. While hiding my identity may have given me certain advantages in the early days, it came at a tremendous cost. To my personal life, to my sense of self, and ultimately to this company, which was deprived of authentic leadership for too long. The Thornton Foundation's mission is to ensure that no woman with the talent and drive to succeed in STEM fields ever feels she needs to hide her light. We will provide financial support, mentorship, and a community where these brilliant minds can shine without apology or concealment. As she spoke, Olivia felt a sense of completion, a circle closing. The charity gala where she'd met Ryan had been for a similar cause, one she'd supported anonymously. Now she was creating her own foundation, putting her name and face to the work that had always mattered to her. After the speech and the obligatory photos, Olivia retreated to her office with Marcus. "Home run," he said, loosening his tie. "The press is eating it up. Tech's Mystery Woman Pays It Forward is already trending." "Good," she nodded. "But what matters is whether we actually make a difference for these women." "Speaking of women," Marcus hesitated. "Patricia Henderson called earlier. Apparently Ryan reached out to her again." Olivia's expression remained neutral. "What does he want now?" "To talk to you. Just talk," Marcus added quickly, seeing her face. "No legal issues, no demands. He says he's been doing a lot of thinking over the past year. Therapy, apparently." "Good for him," she said dismissively. "But I have nothing to say to Ryan Morrison." "I figured as much," Marcus nodded. "I'll let Patricia know." Later that evening, alone in her home office, no longer hidden behind a locked door, but now a central feature of her redesigned house, Olivia found herself thinking about Ryan's request. Why would he want to talk after all this time? What could he possibly have to say that would matter to her now? Curiosity eventually got the better of her. She picked up her phone and called Patricia. "He's in town for a conference," Patricia explained. "He asked if you might be willing to meet for coffee. Just 30 minutes of your time. He was insistent that he has something important to tell you. Olivia considered refusing. Her life was full now. Running Thornton Enterprises, leading the foundation, dating occasionally, successful men who knew exactly who she was and didn't feel threatened by it. She had no need for closure with Ryan, no loose ends that required tying up. And yet, tell him I'll meet him, she said finally. Tomorrow, 3 p.m. at Café Blue. It was a public place, busy enough that their conversation wouldn't be overheard, but not so private that it would feel intimate. Are you sure? Patricia sounded concerned. I'm sure. I'm curious what he thinks is so important. The next day, Olivia arrived at Café Blue precisely on time. She'd chosen to dress casually but professionally. A simple blouse and tailored pants, her hair loose around her shoulders. No power suits, no armor necessary for this encounter. Ryan was already there, seated at a table in the corner. He stood when he saw her, and she was struck by how different he looked. Thinner, certainly, with a bit more gray in his hair, but the change went deeper than appearance. The arrogant confidence that had once defined him was gone, replaced by something more measured, more genuine. Olivia, he said as she approached, thank you for coming. You have 30 minutes, she replied, taking a seat across from him. What's so important? He smiled slightly at her directness. I've rehearsed this conversation a dozen times, and now I can't remember any of my carefully prepared words. Just say what you came to say, Ryan. He nodded, taking a deep breath. I owe you an apology. A real one. Not the kind I used to give where I'd say, I'm sorry you feel that way, or some other non-apology that put the blame on you. She said nothing, waiting. I was cruel to you. Dismissive, condescending, unfaithful. I treated you as less than me because I needed to feel superior. And when I suspected you might be more than you appeared, I betrayed you rather than simply asking you the truth. Why are you telling me this now? She asked. It's been a year. Because it took me that long to really understand what happened. The divorce, losing my position at Collins and Whitman, even my relationship with Vanessa, which ended 3 months ago, by the way. It all forced me to take a hard look at myself. I've been in therapy, trying to understand why I need to feel superior, why I couldn't love you for who you were. And what did you discover? That my entire sense of self-worth was built on external validation. My title, my salary, my status, those weren't just things I valued, they were my entire identity. And when those were stripped away, I had to face the question of who Ryan Morrison actually was beneath all that. Olivia found herself moved, despite her resolve to remain detached. That sounds difficult. The most difficult thing I've ever done, he admitted. But also the most necessary. A silence fell between them. The cafe hummed with activity around them. People on laptops, friends chatting, baristas calling out orders. But at their table, time seemed suspended. I'm not here to ask for another chance, Ryan said finally. I know that's not possible, and honestly, you deserve better than what I could give you, even now. I just wanted you to know that you changed my life, not through your money or your power, but by showing me what real strength looks like. You built something extraordinary while I was busy taking credit for things I didn't earn. Thank you for saying that, Olivia said softly. It means something to hear it. There's one more thing. He reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a small envelope. I've been working with a financial advisor to put together a repayment plan. It's not much, just a start, but I want to repay what I owe you, the real debt, not the legal one you forgave. She looked at the envelope but didn't take it. Keep it. Use it to build something of your own. Are you sure? I'm sure. She stood, signaling the end of their meeting. I wish you well, Ryan. I hope you find what you're looking for. He stood too, nodding in acceptance. I'm starting a small consulting firm focused on sustainable energy for developing nations. Much smaller scale than what you do, but meaningful work. That sounds worthwhile, she said, and meant it. They parted without touching, without promises to stay in touch or maintain any connection. Some chapters were meant to close completely. As Olivia walked back to her car, she felt lighter somehow. Not because she had forgiven Ryan entirely, but because she recognized that his opinion of her no longer mattered. She had built her life on her terms, stepped fully into her power, and created something lasting and meaningful. She called Marcus from the car. "Schedule that interview with Forbes. I'm ready to tell the whole story now." "The personal parts too?" he asked, surprised. "All of it," she confirmed. "No more hiding. Not my success, not my failures, not my journey. It's time for complete authenticity." That night, alone in her solarium, surrounded by her thriving plants, Olivia Thornton breathed deeply and smiled. She had come full circle, from a woman who hid her power to one who wielded it openly, from someone seeking external validation to one who defined success on her own terms. The silent empire she had built was silent no longer, and neither was she.